never stop reading.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here to speak a little bit about the book called Pictures of the Floating Microcosm, New Representation of Japanese Architecture. And I will try to give you a little glimpse of what it is about. Of course, I won't explain you everything and go deeper into very fine explanation. Of course, also because my English is really limited, but also we don't have time. And of course, the idea is to read the book. So this is the book. I think you saw it in the library here, in the bookshop here, and. I don't know if it's working. Yes. So I could go through the book, but it goes too fast. Sorry for that. But for tonight, I will take one example and use it as a I don't know, red line or like a key element of my presentation. So just to tell you that the book itself is not at all a monography, so it's really about a whole family of architects, and I tried that doesn't work really well, and I tried to pictures or to represent it as well in this kind of graphic showing most of the important Japanese architects of the time. Okay. And the family I was talking about is this one, with this very strong lineage, starting with Kazuo and Shinohara and going down to really contemporary architects. So sorry for that. And the example I take tonight is from Ishigami. Of course, that's the one on the cover, so I start with first thing first. And this image is really interesting because I can use it to speak about a lot of topics I'm writing about in the book. I could start with a question about publishing and the way this image has been published. Actually, I didn't wrote lots about this in the book. Of course, it's a whole topic for itself. So I focuses a bit more onto the image itself. And to start about the technique used here. And as other images of Japanese architecture, contemporary Japanese architecture, this image is a hybrid. So it's part of a hand drawing, let's say, and part of it is it's a model photo. Yes. So it's a hybrid, and it's also in between lots of different techniques. So this is a model photo, but this looks like a hand drawing, like a pencil drawing, but it's actually been made on a computer. So even in the technique, it's something in between. If we just take the line of this image, we can have a look more closer to what it could mean and what it's interesting about. With the same example, so same projects of Ishigami's, here we can see a section or an elevation. We don't know. Part of it is clearly a section. And this line used here is really fine, and it's not about the bad projection, but if we can go closer, yes, here, we can see that the line itself is even not anymore a continuous line, but a dotted line, and it's even gray line, so it starts to disappear totally, not totally, of course, but it goes really towards a dilution of boundaries. And this has roots from these older generation, as Shinohara here, or SANAA here, or that is with disappearing, but if you can closer. At first, Shinohara was really about the idea of the project through the line, and it was an abstraction of the project. But going through this different generation, we can go to this kind of project where the line thickness is actually the line at the right scale compared to the actual building. So from a way of representing stuff, they went to something like related to the real structure of the building. So dilution or like dissolution of the boundaries are really key elements related to lines. If I go further into this question of boundaries, we can also take the physical model part of the image and have a look at it, and we can see that this part of paper, of course, it's really thin and has no weight at all compared to other projects, like this house in Plant Grove from Sejima. There is quite obvious links and a relation with those two projects, but we can go much older in the history of representation, and even this kind of model. I don't know if you know this kind of Okoshiezu is a very old way of presenting projects in the Edo period, and even before that. They use a plan that pop up, let's say, to give depiction or representation, description of projects. So we can follow like lineage like this until now. In terms of light, and if we go really to the picture itself, so the document not as a description of a model, but as an image itself, of a photograph here, we can compare it to plenty of other images that are really, really bright and white, as you can see here, and that is at this point interesting because we can here see kind of a loop of relation between model photography and actual building photography made by proper photograph. Here you can see two projects by Sejima and Nishizawa, and on the right is, sorry for Mr. Nindemai, because of course Mr. Nindemai is always like a diptych, but here I put it only one part of it. So it's the same project in the design process, so with model photos, and at the end of the design and the construction by the way a photographer had a look into the project. So you can see that there is a lot of interaction, and no one can say this was first and this one went after, or the reverse. It's really kind of a loop of interaction. Here you can see also a model photo from the Learning Center by SANAA for the competition, and we can see the photograph here. It's by Ivan Ban. They are both very, very bright and light. And to produce this is not just about the quality of the building itself, but it's a lot of work to produce such a bright and overexposed image. Here is my remake of the same view, and as you can see, you need a lot of overexposure to be able to manage it, to get the same effect. So there is really a strong influence of the representation into the idea we build ourselves of the project. Then we can have a look. Oh, that was just to show you what it could has been if the photo was taken with just normal settings. You really have to overexpose the image to get this. We can also make this little joke to remove everything that is not purely construction or architecture in a really small. Let's say, okay, you just get. So if I remove everything that is not purely architecture, you get this. So I don't know, 80% of the image is made with other stuff than purely construction, and that's also a very current topic in this kind of representation. Here you can see Ishigami going over and over again about these plans related to architecture, building this whole naivety world, playing with smallness and childiness also. This book is really this size, so 4-5 centimeter big. Maybe you know it, and he's so proud of it. Oh, sorry, that it made even like a copy of it into another book of his. Another way of looking at this image is to look at the way the perspective is built or made. As you can see, of course, the model photo is a perspective. You can't avoid that. But the drawing itself is much closer than to axonometry. And this kind of in-between two reality is also one of the recurrent elements of this kind of images. And I can just take another example of Ishigami to show you that even in this picture that looks like a model photo, like a normal and plain model photo, it actually has 3 vanishing points. That means, of course, that it's a collage, but also that we can read it as something that is moving, because to get this point and this one, you have to move the camera. And this way of using projection, perspective, vanishing points and so on to produce moving or shifting images is also rooted in a very old history of Japan. Not only Japan, but here we can find quite clear lineage. Here's in Hokusai. Here's in maybe one of them, the craziest image for that. So there are a lot of vanishing points, making this image quite, when you look at it like this, it's quite static. But here you can see that all these lines are not going to one vanishing point, but a lot of them, and we can still read it as a movement into the image. Another way to play with space and movement is this example by Hideyuki Nakayama. This model photo is not the exact view from here. It looks like this, but when we redo it in 3D, that's on the right, it's not like that actually, it's like this, like that. So the point of view I just show you is this one, and we can see here that all the physical model has been stretched by like 2 times in height to depict or to show the space like it is here. And we can see also that the anamorphosis is much stronger than the actual point of view with the right and homogeneous dimensional scale in every dimension of space. So this distortion of space to represent a defective project is also very strong in this family of architects. Again, here you can find like precedent or roots into history. Here, this plan, I think it's really fascinating because, as you can see, it's the view from a different point of the plan. So it's a plan, but with kind of a stretch or distorted landscape that's represents the space just next to the building by doing this kind of totally non-Euclidean projection. And even more here, it's also a Koshiezu, so it's tridimensional, and there is this crazy wall with a window that will link an open space to another open space, or like an outdoor space. Of course, it's quite close to the example I show you tonight. This in between, or this boundary and window between two spaces that are not really clearly outdoor or indoor is also a play with boundaries, space, and movement and so on. Of course, this is not in the book, but I quite like the link because again, not again, but maybe as you know, Le Corbusier is like a god in Japan still now, and the influence even in this kind of mimicking La Petite Maison is really strong, and I can really tell you this also by showing different kind of example. Maybe I don't know if you know this little book by Atelier Bow-Wow called Les plus petites maisons, but it's not a really good translation from the Japanese, because Japanese is Motto Chisarana Ie, and it means even smaller houses. So not the smallest, but even smaller. So of course the reference is pretty clear here, and of course Tsukamoto has a quite a big interest into this crazy window, and even here you can see one of Atelier Bow-Wow's projects, and okay, it's a nice picture of the project, but the little table, the window, the play with the outside inside is quite clear, but you can feel the importance of this little setting by looking at this woman who is Sejima-san. So when you ask Sejima to be the model for a photo is quite important, I think. So SANAA, let's say SANAA. Here you can see some roots or link with this very slender or very fine column that obsesses Le Corbusier, going to say to the photographer, please redo it and do it as I like to. So to go again, like here, it's Hideyuki Nakayama with a small Clandre reference. And back to Ishigami. I don't know who saw this image in his book, but in a closer look you can see that it's still La Petite Maison, so Villa de Lac, but in the Japanese way of looking at it, or at least the Ishigami's way of looking at it, with all this playful, childish representation, and all the way of blurring boundaries between interior and exterior. And we can still, well, again, we have all the topics I spoke about tonight. I think it's the last picture I will show you tonight, so I hope you have a lot of questions, because of course it was a bit painful to listen to me, but please if you have a question. Yes.
Why did you start with Japanese architecture in the first place?
actually, I didn't start with Japanese architecture in my book, yes, but in my research, not. I had like a much wider frame, and of course, it was really difficult to find interesting things to say, or like a specific thing to say, because it was okay. We can speak about representation in general, but it was really too wide. And so why Japan? Because I think it's now, at least the last 3 decades, there has been lots of architects, and especially, as I said, in this Shinohara family, that produce very particular or specific images or documents or drawings, and I thought that was interesting to look at it, to understand a bit more the way they produce architectural buildings, or to look at images to understand better the design process itself. Of course, tonight I wasn't really able to bring this up, but in my book I hope it's more legible. Yeah. Yes.
Go on.
This really childlike, very miniature presentation. It's like something quite particular about this Japanese approach. And did you find something out about the connection to Japanese culture, or would you say that's just my perspective, and in your research you found something similar in other nationalities too?
I think it's one of the most specific or particular to Japan. What's the topic more particular to Japan? I think it's really it's really difficult to resume it, but it's related to the kawaii concept. I don't know if you know this term. It's the kawaii means, it's really difficult to translate, but it means nice, cute. I think it's one of the best translation. And this cuteness is really something that the cuteness culture, the kawaii culture, really is really, how can I say, it has a great influence into the whole society the last 30 years in Japan. So architects is part of this world, but they took this kawaii culture and put it in architecture, and I think it could be really a really interesting strategy of playing with boundaries, not only with physical boundaries, but boundaries of even in French, I lost my word. The boundaries of architecture. So it's a way of saying, okay, architecture is. It looks like something childish, and by making projects looking nice and cute, I can even go deeper or further into very strong and radical architecture. Most of the projects that looks really cute and nice and kawaii are super strong and not. It's really. How can I say that?
I found it quite striking in the pathing to the book, because it's like you have a really modern architecture and then this so cute, tiny, comic-like, softening elements. And I found the contrast quite.
and of course you can find. I try to list a bit the reason of this kind of images in my book. But one of them is to go into the history of Japan, where the concept of furniture is much it's pretty different than the one we have in Western countries. Kagu is the name for furniture, but it's Kagu is also the wine glass and okay, there is not much wine glass in Japan, but the futon are also Kagu, and so you and the tatami is also Kagu, so it's a little bit towards architectural elements and construction elements, and also it take into the name the small objects and plants and so on. So this way of looking at architecture in a broad way is, I think, is quite specific to Japan. And even though you put about the kawaii trend, there is some really deep roots into the history. That gives reason or to this kind of strange, for ourselves point of view, strange way of depicting architecture.
Do you find this kawaii concept only in, say, smaller buildings, when a small building is being designed, planned, or do you also find it in larger structures like, say, a shopping mall or an office block in the city where
yes.
commercial clients?
Yeah, it's really in all scale of all type of building. Of course, I took, let's say, one example here, and it's quite small house, but yes, big buildings can also be put into this kawaii.
And at which point of the project development does it go away? I mean, at one point you will have to change to traditional exact plans with all the numbers and everything in place.
Yeah, sure, but it's really parallel in every step of the designing process. What I saw, and I didn't say that. Of course, I looked at images, but I met a lot of the Japanese I spoke about. So, of course, I could also understand a bit of their practice by asking questions. So I met them, and I could see what's their way of presenting their design process and pointing the specificity to their way of making projects.
One more question, please. This genealogy tree that you showed in the beginning was very nice, very interesting. I know a similar image from my studies here in Switzerland. Somebody made a graph of the Swiss architects a couple of years ago, and this starts with the figures of the heroic modernism, I think, and those who came after them, but who are also the older generation. Some of them are already dead now, I think, like Kenzo Tange and Isozaki and maybe also Tadao Ando. And these people...
Isozaki is alive.
Oh, he's alive still. The point I want to make is, I think they all have a kind of heroicism still.
Yeah.
There was a global current, and they had a specific Japanese interpretation of this, in my view, and now this seems to have disappeared. So this is also what you said. This kawaii strikes me as anti-heroic, maybe.
Yeah.
Also, if
Yeah, of course, it's totally. It's pretend to be totally anti-heroic, but at the end, I think it's also a way of hiding behind this and still making quite heroic architecture. In another way, of course, it is not like brutalism, Japanese brutalism, but and what I don't write about in my book, there is right now a big comeback to a very heavy structure in Japan. So we can even see all what I spoke about tonight as something already past. So it's going maybe towards like a much more concrete and heavy and brutalist, let's say, way of making architecture. Yeah.
I mean, it is at an end, you could say.
It is
something like, to me, it's something that Seijima started somehow, and Ishigami took it to an extreme. And it's really like becoming immaterial. Like it's really almost not there anymore, ephemeral. And there's no, like a wonder can it go further.
Yes, of course.
Like where does it? Because it's almost at an end somehow, and you wonder what comes next. And the drawings, of course, they totally support this, and they're like characterized by this fragility. But it's so extreme that somehow you wonder what comes after.
Actually, what comes after now is, if I still use Ishigami as an example, but is the return of the coming back of the poché. So, of course, all this image has no poché. I don't know if you know the term in English, but it's French term. So the big black surfaces into the section. You can't find any drawing like this in Japan for this particular period. But like 1 or 2 years ago, lots of Japanese architects started again to use this really dark black section, and of course it's I think it's interesting to see this growing, because now lots of projects are going much more towards very concrete and heavy structure and way of thinking about space and so on. And there is a big comeback of boundaries, and it's going like towards the exactly opposite direction here.
Because now how you present it is because you also refer back to the Edo period, to actually history, you tie it back and you kind of make it almost very linear.
Yeah, of course.
And you even take Shinohara in it as kind of, you take his line drawings, but you could almost, because then you could say if it's that linear, then it doesn't, if you tie it back to history, then does it end now, or will it continue, or did you actually, is it a relapse? Because even if you take Shinohara, there's certain periods where you could say that this, the boundaries are very clear, the structure is very clear, and you take a
when he drew these very simple drawings, that was already like super heavy and strong and structured. So there was like a much more there were a lot of distance between the depiction or the representation, the drawings, and the building itself in Shinohara. And maybe we can say that in the SANAA and later this managed, or they started to merge a little bit more representation and buildings or construction.
Almost with Itō as kind of a...
of course, Itō is the main figure here. I didn't show anything from Itō, but Itō is always coming back in my book.
Because it's very characteristic about the really contemporary Japanese architecture, is this abstraction, no? Like total erasure of material. Everything's white. Like it's just it's just an idea, like it's just this very abstract space. And in Shinohara's period, he was of course using a lot of material, even just earth on the ground and things like this. And because I was in Japan recently and I spoke to Tetsuo Kondo, and I was talking to him about this, and he said, but we don't only use white because we want to make it abstract. It's more like a budget thing. Like we need to save money. And the easiest thing to make shitty material look good is just to paint it white.
Most of the answer I got from Kondo-san or Sejima was this kind of. At first, it was this kind of answer. So this light. It's just because of the neon tube. So of course you have this homogeneous, very bright lights in the model because that's all we had. Okay, and why the models are white? Oh, that's the cheapest cardboard. Okay, and so on and so on. But yeah, that's also kind of I think it's also kind of a joke. It's in reality as well, but you can go a bit deeper into understanding of why the reason of this white everywhere. Still, it's not anymore really the case, but in like a couple of years ago, it was still there. I think there is this very down-to-earth reason, but there is a lot of other, much more theoretical, let's say, reason to play or to use white as the color.
What you said, it's about abstraction. I think what is fascinating that the Japanese architects are so inventive when it comes to playing tricks, hiding things. Underground or in a section that you will never really cut in the project. So they are very they're kind of sneaky in this regard, but the outcome is very beautiful.
You refer in your book also to, I only read the first chapter, but it's part of the computer hand drawing, that it all looks, and you also show it with the perspective with the models, that it looks like they make these skinny models, that everything's hand drawn, that it's all kind of some kind of facade. Like the plans are computer drawn or rendered or copied or whatever. Nothing's really what it seems. So it's the reasons why they build it like that, but it's the excuse maybe that it's cheap, but they go so much effort in representing it that way that you wonder if it's just to be cheap. They can save a lot of money on manual labor. So it's why do you think that there's this whole culture around that of
I think it's
one thing, doing it differently?
I think what I learned also by researching in Japan and speaking with Japanese architects is that in the Western world, and especially in the French-speaking world, France is maybe the country that puts reason or like all the Cartesianism has really put like a boundary, like frame to everything. And as a little Swiss architect going there, and also by making this kind of research, I was at first trying to find reason and find limits and put ideas or concepts into boxes and at the end you understand that maybe what is the most intriguing and interesting in Japanese culture is is this kind of in between everything and everywhere. So yes, it's hand-drawn, but it's on a computer. Yes, it looks like a shitty model or like a very non-expensive model, but it's it took like a whole I don't know, a week to produce with 10 interns and so on and so on. So it's always like this. When you start to understand something, you find you never find something harder to grab. It's always a bit shifting, floating. Yeah, thank you.
But I was also thinking about what's like the connection between what you said about like this childishness or kawaiiness, because I understood it. I think always a bit different, because I think what puts all together is maybe just like an atmosphere or a feeling to make the human senses more crisp. That's why they choose maybe childish pictures, because children have more crisp senses. They see more small things and have more joy for small things, or this atmosphere, and they capture it like the whole life. And I think because Japanese people are a bit more, they have like more a sixth sense maybe. They try to make an image out of it, and they use maybe more childish pictures to bring out this kind of feelings and bring this light, like innocent, or I don't know. I think they try to get this atmosphere more.
I mean, it's super poetic. You know?
Right.
It's so poetic. I mean, these drawings, they're just wonderful. And I mean, it's the big difference, I think. I mean, let's look, if you look at the Swiss architectural scene, it's very common right now to, you know, you do a competition and the image you give away, you know, to a professional rendering office. I don't know, you pay them 4,000 francs and they do 2 nice images. And somehow this tool of communicating what you're doing, it somehow gets lost a bit, at least in this country. It's weird. I mean, you know, which has this tradition of whatever, the analog architecture and drawing and so on, but somehow it's gotten a bit lost. And it's nice in Japan, I mean, they do it themselves. It's like part of their work. So it's really nice.
I think in Japan, maybe just having reasons or definitions, and that's so important. That's why they look so poetic. In the approach, I mean, all these architects, they learned in a logical way nowadays. But back then, they didn't have to start from a briefing. You know, they just started from an image or maybe a poetic thing. That's why maybe they look childish. But maybe I don't think they really tried to make it look like from child's point of view. It just came out from.
They don't think so much
no,
about
we don't.
it. No, I really think so. I mean, it's so nice. I think they just do it. They can also not really explain. Probably.
No, it was so But all the question I asked was, of course, trying to understand a bit clearer what they want to do, or so the reason behind it. But all the answer I got it was. Just I don't know, we do it like that, we always like work, if you tell me, or the reason there, this kind of, the carbon is cheap, okay. And at first, they really even don't understand, or didn't understand the general topic of representation. I think it wasn't at all a topic for them. They produce design, they produce architecture, and of course they use tools to do it, but they are not at all. There is no reflection or like awareness. Thank you to that. It's just an everyday tool, and the way they use it is the way they like to use it, but. At least at first it looks like really something really light and casual. Yeah.
Are European Western architects that different from that? I mean, if you ask an architect over here, why do you do it this or that way? Probably the first answer is, well, it's always been done like that.
I don't think so. I think here there's a very high awareness why you do something, or at least you try to think about it and theoreticize it. I mean, much more than in this environment.
Yeah.
Did it also you started with the family tree somehow, which is, I had a close look at it once. It's very nice to see the whole story. And I think this family tree, as you said, there's somebody who made it for Switzerland, but I think it's stronger in Japan. It's to a certain family, to what you come from.
Sure.
So that is really clear for them. If you ask a Japanese architect, what is your master, what is your big older figure, they can say to you, yes, of course, it's, I don't know, Shinohara, Ito. And here, if you ask somebody like making architecture now, right now, and ask them, what is your master, let's say. I don't know, maybe a little bit. I was quite influenced by this and this and this, but there were a lot of names, and everyone started to try to blur a path and so on. But in Japan, there is no. Here it's quite clear.
Yeah,
the lineage.
I think because we're all very conscious about who we were studying under or who we were working for, and if we do our own thing. I think it's the question of who are you, what is your image, how do you represent, what is your images, do you make them the same or not, or I think it's very conscious, this decision then of, at least in my surroundings, let's say. And I think maybe then if you accept much more your family line, it's I think the question is maybe less relevant if you have to reinvent or kind of define yourself differently, it's more kind of a continuation of what was happening, so you just take it and do your own thing with it and continue it. So I think maybe you're less thinking consciously about it because you don't have this need of looking for your proper identity somehow to define it.
Yeah, sure.
It's maybe wrong structure.
It was always in Japanese culture, not that you always have someone, you always respect the elder, and you always have like a teacher or a professor, and you always identify quite much with this person. And I think in Europe, and they always, like craftsmen, they always copy and copy and copy till they never reach perfection, but they try. And I think maybe in architecture it's a bit the same. They try to understand, like they try to draw the images like your professor and stuff like that. And in Europe maybe you have more I don't know, you ask it's not criticizing, but you always ask behind, and you always ask, maybe there's another way, maybe, and they're not like cutting off your thinking and just trying to remake something, because it's more in the head, I think, in Europe, and in Japan it's more in your stomach. Did you say that in English? I don't know. In German you say like a stomach feeling?
Gut feeling.
Gut feeling, thank you. And I think maybe it's a cultural thing, I don't know.
It's a cliché of the individual, Western individual, and the Eastern community. But I think it's really good.
Because Japan, they never had like this. They tried to find out like if there is a proportion, like a lele. I don't know. Yeah, like a Palladio or something. And in Europe you have it a lot. And in Japan you can't, like in tea houses you can't find like a rule for proportion. It's more visual. It's just like with the eyes and not calculated maybe, I don't know.
Oh, you have a rule, I mean, like the tatami or whatever. But then it's, if you look at it really, it's much more complex. Like it's always somehow broken.
And they always like, I mean, if there is a tokonoma, like this niche having like a picture hanged, and they like someone said to me they never have the nail in the middle, like mathematically. They always put it a bit more on the left. And I was like, what? Because it's just like not perfection. They always like kind of try to shift something, and that's what maybe it's not like the mathematical or like the way they think. If they're not thinking, maybe like Europeans do.
There's one small thing I'd like to talk about. All this fascination we have for this strange other culture. I think sometimes it also becomes a fashion. There was back when I got my diploma, there was one particular professor whose students kind of went for this Japanese way of making plans, and on the other hand they had really heavy concrete models. It was not quite balanced out, but it was fascinating to see how they were trying to emulate this kind of representation.
Now, yeah, of course. Now the link between all the in my book and in my research for my PhD, I didn't even try to make a comparison because it's like you can really be totally lost in this kind of in the Western world we can do like that, in the Japanese world we can do that. So it's never ending story. But of course, at the end, I'm looking to Japan from my Westerners eyes. So this particular point of view, I can't be totally extracted. Yeah, that was the first point. And then the heritage or the reference or the influence from Japan to here, the European architectural practice is it could also be like a whole history because and of course it's going in both directions. But yeah, even with Le Corbusier here and other big figures like this, really there is influences like physical. Of course, there is some of the employees of Le Corbusier went back to Japan, but right now there is of course a lot of interns going in Japan and making their internship there and coming back here in Europe too, and trying to keep this Japaneseness alive here. And of course there is a fascination from Japanese architects to Swiss or French architecture. So of course it's both ways, and it's super complex to find, try to find like links and so on. But it's always interesting to look at things like that.
Isozaki wrote a nice book about that. Japan kind of goes back into the history of the out of Corbusier and all that stuff.
I mean, there is also a slight problem when the representation becomes so strong, because then, I mean, in case of Ishigami, obviously it's so coherent and it's like part of the work that it's great. But if, like, let's say in an academic context or students, when the representation becomes more important than the project actually, I think you can have those cases because it's so strong, that the drawing captures you so much that the project gets a bit behind, or it's maybe not so important anymore. Like the way to talk about architecture.
Actually, Itō said that in one book, like a quite recent book. He told what exactly you just told here. He was saying it's a pity now that the representation of architecture is stronger or more important than the actual architecture. And it reached also the discussion we had before about meeting a certain point where you can't go further. Of course, it's maybe all what I'm talking about here tonight and in the book is maybe something already in the past. It's really we are really in the border now.
I would be interested to see those things that you're talking about that start to appear now in Japan. Because I don't know any, so I would be interested to see Would you say also? I think like basically the things you're showing is all one school. I mean, obviously.
Yes, sure.
It's a strong representation. But because there are not so many other. Somehow it ended up everything in this. No? Like this childness, cuteness.
It's
Seijima is like over. She's like above everywhere. So
more
because people like, I don't know, let's say Takamatsu Shinichi, who did machines, like
it's another
like nothing came out of that somehow. So I wonder where did this all go? Or just vanished?
Even from Ando,
from Ando, that's true.
There is really few people pretending to be the pupil of Ando.
Do you have any idea how much time they invest? Like at Ishigami's office?
Yes, I have some idea.
Because, I mean, here there are a few architects who just draw and then they publish a little book and they, I don't know if he earns money with this, but I mean, in relationship to what he builds.
Well,
I mean, he doesn't build that much, but he publishes quite a lot of exhibitions.
Like most of the good architects, that's really stupid to say that. But of course, Ishigami has a very healthy parents, because if you go like a bit in detail into his biography, you understand that his father is the head, I think, of the Kanagawa Institute of Technology. So by chance he made like a nice workshop, and so on and so on. And same for Seijima-san, and same for Itō, I don't know. But of course, you can't be Ishigami and making one project a year or less than that, and still have, I don't know. I went there, they were 20 or something like that.
It's easy to don't pay people.
That's right. And of course they spend hours, and of course money to produce this, because they could spend this amount of time producing, I don't know, technical drawing. And of course they produce technical drawings, and they are beautiful. But it's crazy how much time they invest into this models, drawings, and so on. Yeah.
But I just wanted to answer, because you said it's a Western approach. I think it's not, because it's a very Eastern, like it's what we talked about before. They don't regard, like if you work for someone, it's not that I mean, of course you contribute, but in first respect you learn. And you're happy that you can learn from this person.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to work for free, because it's part of your education. And I mean, as you said before, Japanese people, they would never, for instance, switch offices.
No.
Like here, you go to Hasekunigo and then you work for, I don't know, DNA. It doesn't happen. I mean, it's just, it's clear.
Even to quit an office, for example, SANAA, of course, it's a quite big office, at least for Japanese standard. But to be an employee of Seijima and Nishizawa, it's of course it's such an honor. So if you want to quit SANAA, you ask Seijima once, and she say nothing, and then you have to re-ask a couple of months after, and she's still saying yes. When the time will come, you can go, and so on and so on. And there is like employees like they try to escape SANAA from years after the first. And of course he quits and saying, okay, sorry, I have to leave the office. I have to work by myself or whatever. I have a family. I want to see my children growing and so on. It's the end of your career in Japan. It's like the worst thing you can say to your master, to say, no, I have something better to do. And even Nishizawa was the employee of Seijima, and he asked her, can I go and make my own office? And she said, no, never. You can still have your own office into the same, in the same space, but we have to still work together, and then they founded SANAA, but he didn't manage to escape.
I don't know if it's that sounds very good. I don't think she forbids people to leave.
Sorry?
I don't think she forbids people to leave.
No, it's quite close to that.
For sure, there's something about it.
Well, thank you for your question and for attention.
Thank you for listening. For further information on the bookshop and upcoming events, please check out our website neverstopreading.com.